the LaxFactor podcast. What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching episode 293 of the LaxFactor podcast. I'm your host, Ted Hoost, and today we're going to jump right into the weekend recap, starting with number 2 Maryland and number 1 Notre Dame. Jordan Faison gave Notre Dame a 3-1 lead late in the first quarter. A dodge across the top to the left. He puts on the brakes, rolled back to his right, took a couple steps, and dusted Logan McNaney low. The Terps would answer with a 3-goal run capped by a Daniel Kelly goal a little over halfway through the second quarter. Bryce Ford found him on the crease. Kelly took a few steps to get his hands free and shipped it low past Ricky Ardelli. 4-3 Terps. Notre Dame answered the bell very quickly with a 2-goal spurt concluded by Max Buzenkill. Will Angrick got planted on his backside. He managed to flip a one-handed pass off to Buzenkill, who busted McNaney off stick hip for the finish. 5-4 Irish. Maryland's defense showed up in a big way over the third quarter, starting with A.J. Larkin and Will Schaller beating down Chris Kavanaugh, forcing the turnover credited to Larkin. That resulted in a Bryce Ford goal. He dodged down the right alley, beat Ben Ramsey, went 5-hole on Ricky Ardelli, and now it's 5-all. Later in the third quarter, Maryland's Jackson Canfield snagged a Brady Pokorny pass out of the sky right in front of him, all disrespectful-like. That turnover resulted in another Bryce Ford goal, this time from Eric Spanos. Spanos dragged the defense down the right alley, drew a slide, hit Ford on the backside with time and room, and he dusted Ricky Ardelli low. 6-5 Terps. Yet another moment in the third. This time it's Jordan Faison getting stripped by Will Schaller. Ball goes back up the other way. Larkin, the long pole, hits Danny Kelly, who handcuffed Ricky Ardelli on what appeared to be the near side low. 7-5 Terps. Maryland would score the eventual game winner while man down once again, thanks to a forced turnover on the defensive end. Will Schaller putting the smackdown on Jake Taylor while he was being force-fed on the crease. Ball goes back up the other way, and another long pole. This time it's Jack McDonald. Dropped it to Daniel Kelly in stride. He dunked it. 11-9 Maryland. After Notre Dame got back to within a goal and had a final chance to tie the game with under a minute to play, Chris Kavanaugh ended up with the ball on the doorstep just off the left crease, and Logan McNaney made an incredible kick save, booted the ball to the sideline. Will Schaller won the run out, giving Maryland the ball with 19.7 seconds left on the clock, and that was the ball game as the Terps were able to run the clock out. They win 11-10. Number 18, Virginia at number 6. Hopkins, McCabe Millen scored his second goal of the contest with 2:06 in the first off a man-up play. Truett Sunderland found him on the right wing. He was able to plant his feet, sting the corner. That gave UVA a 5-2 lead. Hopkins would answer with a 3-goal run. The final 2 goals of said run were scored by Hunter Chauvette. The first, a nice face dodge off the left wing, got under his man and buried it low to low. He scored the second a minute later, dodging into the middle of the field. His defender fell down. He stepped down, let it rip, and the score was tied up at 5s. Ryan Colsey would give Virginia a 9-7 lead. A dodge down the left wing, got under his man, brought it back to his left, stuck the top left corner. Colsey's been huge for Virginia lately, by the way, much improved from a season ago. Hopkins would go on a huge run over the remainder of the third quarter and into the fourth, scoring 6 unanswered, capped by Dylan Bowers' laser to the bottom left corner with 7:48 left in the game, fed by Matt Collison. That made it 13-9 Jays. While UVA would manage to get back to within a goal with 10 seconds, Hopkins managed to win the ensuing faceoff. Barely won that faceoff, and they booked the 1-goal victory and retained the Doyle Smith Cup. Number 8, Princeton at number 7, Duke. Princeton jumped out to a 5-2 lead after an early second quarter goal by Nate Kabiri, who dodged up the right off a poorly set pick that still managed to flummox the 2 defenders, and that was kind of how things went for Duke on the day. Chris Cusalito beat his man down the right alley, forced the defense to fire, and found Luke Graham on the crease alone, and he dunked it. That got Duke back to within a goal, 10-9 with 11:43 remaining in the third. They also showed who I first assumed must have been Graham's grandmother or something like that in the crowd, really happy. I'm going to roll it here so you can see it. It was either Graham's grandma or it was someone's grandma who's just all Duke all the way. Either way, you love to see grandmas in the crowd really happy. Duke's problem. Every time they knocked on the door, Coulter Mackesy was there to slam it in their face. He scored less than 2 minutes later, a nice dodge off the left wing, swimmed his defender. They both fell. He got up and busted a twister past Jamison, back to a 2-goal lead, 11-9 Princeton. Later on in the third, Luke Graham again, a feed from Eric Maliver. Graham falling down as he quick sticks it past Croddick. It required a review to confirm his hand wasn't in the crease before the ball crossed the plane. Knotted up at 11s, the first tie since it was 2-2 in the first quarter. But Coulter Mackesy, being the baller he is, scored a little over 3 minutes later in transition, rolled off the approaching defender and scored the first right-handed goal of his career. Do not fact check me on that. 12-11 Princeton. With 4 minutes remaining in the game, Andrew McAdory dodged off a Ben Johnston screen, high, middle of the field, dodged down the right, dragged his and Johnston's men with him. He banged it back to Johnston, who had all sorts of time and room, and Duke was cooking with peanut oil, down by only a goal, 14-13 with 4 minutes and 13 seconds remaining in the contest. It felt glorious until 5 seconds after the ensuing faceoff that was promptly won by Andrew McMeekin and laced past Jamison by none other than Coulter Mackesy, back to a 2-goal lead for the Tigers that they would not relinquish. McMeekin, who struggled this season, came up with the game-clinching face-off after Andrew McAdory scored with 19 seconds remaining, and Princeton ran out the clock after a timeout. All rejoice, Princeton wins in Durham. Number 13, Penn at number 4, Carolina. The story early for Penn: failed clears. Carolina took a 4-1 lead with 2:51 left in the first after Spencer Wertheim picked off a terrible attempt at clearing the ball, streaked upfield, hit Dominic Petramala for an easy finish from about 6 yards out. James Matan made it 7-1 heels after Carroll made a good save, but gave up the rebound that found its way into Matan's stick. He busted a bit of a whirly twirl and easily deposited it past Carroll. Owen Duffy, who's been quiet for, who had been quiet up to that point for a quarter and a half. He woke up, dodged to the middle of the field, got his hands free, and beat Carroll to make it 10-3 UNC, and they'd go on to win it outright 16-8. And that is it for the quick recaps with highlights and all that crap. I'm going to roll highlights here in the overtime as we go through and we talk about more of these games in greater detail now. We're going to loop back, though, talk about the games that we just recapped with highlights, and then we'll dig into games like Army, Syracuse, and Ohio State, and the like. Before I get into that, though, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Go to LaxFactor.com. You can get yourself swag, t-shirts, hats, all of that good crap. Support the channel because almost for sure this podcast is going to get flagged because I've put a bunch of dope highlights in here. And also, new announcement here. We're about to launch a Division III podcast and recap show that is going to drop on Tuesdays. So be sure to come back now on Tuesday and you'll be able to watch that D3 recap show. And then the preview show on Thursdays is just going to be on Thursdays instead of Wednesdays. So putting out full podcasts on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday now every week. So come back, watch that D3 crap because we got to start talking about D3 lacrosse. Now, we are going to shut up. We, by me, is what I mean. We're going to shut up here. We're going to talk about the Notre Dame and Maryland game. As I said in the recap, the Maryland defense was the huge story. They were incredible, not just at defending, but they forced turnovers. They pushed a ton of transition. They got the ball from the defensive side to the offensive side very effectively. Larkin and McDonald each had an assist, while Eric Kohler and Will Schaller each forced 2 turnovers. It was a great showing by the Maryland defense against a very athletic Notre Dame offense. I'm not going to say that Notre Dame's offense is, the best offense in the country, but they have depth, they have athleticism, they have proven scorers, and the Maryland defense did an incredible job against them. Logan McNaney in cage for Maryland. I saw someone on Twitter posting these people are sleeping on Logan McNaney. I don't know anyone, not anyone who watches any level of college lacrosse that knows that the Maryland lacrosse team is a thing that's sleeping on Logan McNaney here. They picked the right number 1. I've said that before here as well. And once again, how are people sleeping on a dude who's wearing the number 1 for Maryland? I don't know. He had 16 saves in the day, just 10 goals against. His second half stood out, though. 11 saves over the third and fourth quarters, including that bonkers kick save at the end. So credit to McNaney for playing huge on a big stage against the number 1 team in the country. There was 10,000 fans on hand in Atlanta, Georgia to watch this one. So that was pretty crazy. Maryland had some quality depth in their scoring, Eric Spanos pacing the team 3-1, Bryce Ford the transfer 2-1, Danny Kelly 3-0, Urksa 1-1. You look at it here, and not high end scoring out of anybody outside of Spanos having a pretty good day here, but everyone's contributing on the offensive side. That's going to be important. Chris Kavanaugh, 4 goals for the Irish. Jake Taylor, 3-1. Once again, usual suspects for the Irish showed up. They've got to get some better depth out of these guys here down the road, especially Devin McLean. I'd like to see him do a little bit more. But Jordan Faison scoring 2 goals. That's a good sign for Notre Dame overall. The Irish, they were edged despite winning 18 of 24 faceoffs on the day here. Will Lynch, 16 of 22, 12 ground balls. That's a hell of a day out of Will Lynch. I do always marvel at how often people will complain about the faceoff, about getting rid of the faceoff. I may have even been guilty about it here and there, but then you see how many times teams just absolutely wax their opponents at the faceoff dot and then still lose the game. Syracuse's loss to Harvard comes to mind here. So credit to Will Lynch, though. 16 of 22, picked up 12 GBs. Didn't matter. Notre Dame still lost the game, but a hell of a game here. Maryland now the new number 1, so I'll have to do my poll after the games are finished being played today, and I will have Maryland at number 1. And credit to me, I've had Maryland at either 3 or 4 in every poll I put in here. I believe the preseason poll that was put out, I had Maryland at number 3 in that. I had Notre Dame, Syracuse, and Maryland, and I might have dropped them to 4 at one point. I'm not sure. But yeah, I believe I've had them at 4 or better all season long here. So I'll be happy to give the Terps a number one ranking. I'm going to drop Notre Dame 1 spot to number 2 because you lose to the number 1 team. No one, they still haven't lost to anybody else. So my order will be 1 and 2. They're just going to flip flop here come poll time. All right, we're going to shut up and move on from this one. It was a great game though. Overall, and just the defensive performance out of Maryland was incredible. Offensively, they're doing enough. They're sharing the ball. They're just an opportunistic team on offense, and defensively, they are really starting to gel and come into their own. They look absolutely nightmarish defensively here, especially the way McNaney has been playing thus far. Hopkins and Virginia. Now, hey, bounce back here for Virginia. This is a loss for Virginia, but they're winning 8-7 at halftime. That third quarter murdered them. 5-1 over the course of the third quarter, got Hopkins back in it, and they end up with the win. But moral of the story, Virginia, after a terrible outing against Ohio State, comes out and they look good. Now, yes, Virginia drops to 2-3. I think it's the first time they've had a losing record in a while, but I believe the last time they were in this position, they bounced back and won the title. So for all of us who are chirping Syracuse or Virginia for losing some early season games, maybe the sky isn't falling yet or doesn't have to be. We'll see. But I thought it was a great outing overall. It was good to see McCabe Millen get back in the mix here. He went for 3 goals and a helper. Truett Sunderland had a great day, 4 goals and 2 assists. They struggled on defense. Kyle Marist didn't have a great day in cage, 8 saves to the 13 goals against. But once again, solid showing, a showing that they needed badly. It is a loss, but as an outside observer, it was at least a good loss. You're not mad at them for losing this game. Now for Hopkins, they're now 3-1 in 1-goal games. They beat Towson by a goal, 11-10. They beat Loyola by a goal, 9-8, and now UVA by a goal, 13-12. They beat up Georgetown, 11-6. Arguably the best team they've played so far. They took Denver out 13-10. They haven't played the toughest schedule, especially now that Towson and Loyola apparently stink. We're all finding this out. But they've been tested, and other than that loss to North Carolina, they've passed every test. So credit to Hopkins for getting the job done when it matters. Now, after not scoring in his last 2 games, Hunter Chauvette paced Hopkins. He sniped 5 goals off just 9 shots. Great to see the lefty getting back into the mix. He had 2 goals in the middle of the game there that we highlighted quickly. They proved huge in that comeback and allowing Hopkins to get things tied back up again and keep pace in this game early on. Collison 1 and 2. Something to note is Melendez did not play. It looked like he may have gotten banged up a little bit, and he was limping around and did not come back out onto the field. So I presume an injury, but it wasn't sure in the telecast, and I'm an idiot, and I try to watch too many games at once, and I don't always hear what's going on, which I have to stop. I really just need to focus on one game at a time instead of getting cocky and trying to watch 3 or whatever the hell I do. I've at least been trying to limit it to 2 as much as possible, but it still draws my attention away. So That's it. Now, Luke Stout had a hot start. He stopped 50% or more of the shots he faced in each of the first 3 outings for Hopkins. He's been at or below 45% in each of his last 3 outings, with a 38% stinker against his former team, Loyola. So I think he's going to be fine, but that's something to watch here as they go to the Dome next weekend against Syracuse, and Virginia is going to take on Towson in Charlottesville. So Virginia should be able to pick up a win against Towson. If they lose that game, then the Boo Birds and the parent chat is going to get ugly. But for now, Virginia's okay, and I think they'll beat Towson next weekend. Next up, Duke and Princeton. I think this is one of the best games of the weekend, probably the best game of the weekend. It took place Friday night, so it probably lost a little bit of its luster at this point. But with that said, Duke, they have an Andrew McAdory problem in the sense that I don't know why he's only on the field enough to take 6 shots in a game like this. His best game of the year in the win over Michigan, he took 9 shots, scored 3 goals with a dish. Now, granted, all 3 of those goals came late after they realized, you know what would be sick? If we just started feeding Andrew McAdory the ball a lot more, and then he scores 3 goals, you win a game that you were probably going to lose if you didn't make that adjustment. They come out against Princeton. Adjustment is gone. Andrew McAdory is not getting the ball all the time. It is not sick anymore to see him with the ball, and Duke loses this game to Princeton, I think, because of it. Now, I don't know how. Listen, I'm an idiot. I coached a huge chunk of my young life from 8th grade till I was a senior in high school. I coached youth lacrosse. When I got out of college, I immediately started coaching JV lacrosse and JV and varsity in the same year, my first year. Then varsity, multiple years coaching varsity lacrosse, and then real low level NJCAA college lacrosse for 6 years. But I did get 55 wins in 6 seasons there. So I was a coach. I do think about this shit like a coach, albeit I'm an idiot compared to these guys. But it has still perplexed me why Andrew McAdory appears to be your best offensive player, and I just do not understand why he's not on the field for every offensive possession. I don't care if you run him with the first and second midfield. With what you've done offensively so far against subpar competition thus far, other than this game here against Princeton, let me pop. I don't want to pop off and say they played subpar. Yeah, subpar. Bellarmine, Jacksonville, St. Joseph's, Michigan. You have not been the offensive juggernaut that we expect you to be because you're Duke and you have talent all up and down the roster. So to come into this game, to learn what you learned against Michigan and then not to apply that against Princeton is a little bit beyond me. Now, maybe they see something in practice I don't. Maybe there's something in game film they're seeing that I don't, and maybe McAdory isn't the end-all, be-all or the cure for this team's offensive woes, but sure as shit looks like he might be, and I just don't understand not getting him the ball more. So that's all I have to say about that, but in the end, fuck me, I'm a moron. Andrew McMeekin. Very important, I think, to say because while I have not been shitting on Andrew McMeekin by any means, I have been noting that Andrew McMeekin has been struggling at the faceoff dot for Princeton. He goes 8 of 15 on the day, including the 2 victories late in the game that played heavily into Princeton winning out. I always say if you go for 50% at the dot, but put up a point, in addition to that, it makes it feel more like a 55% day, and I'm giving that to Andrew McMeekin. He goes 53% at the dot, 3 GBs. I believe he had an assist also, so that's like a 58% day for this kid, and in a close win, credit to him. That's a great win. And actually, I'm an idiot. He assisted the game winner, I believe, or the eventual game winner. So monster moment for that kid. Let's see if he can turn things around and fix the issues that Princeton has at the dot. Because I said, I really just sounded drunk when I just rambled that last sentence together there. I said that fixing your face-off problems is not an easy thing to do. And seemingly, at least in this game, McMeekin stepped up and played well. Now, Kobe Ginder here going 6 of 17. I'm not sure why there was such an even split there at that point, but Ginder was getting waxed. McMeekin comes in and plays a little better. Once again, I did watch this game, but I was sipping on the Blue Moon, so I was not paying close attention to what was happening there as my whole family was down in the basement playing games. I'm drinking beer, watching lacrosse, and all that. I should have watched it more closely, but hey, dude wins 8 of 15, wins down the stretch. Princeton wins the game. Good job, buddy. Terrible day to be a goalie if you were a goalie in this game here. 42% out of Jamison. Roddick was 30%, and Roddick's been pretty good so far. So that wasn't dope, but Roddick does get the win. So, screw Jamison in that sense, at least from his perspective. The highly regarded Princeton defense, they've given up 12-plus goals per game over their first 3 outings. Their offense, though, has proven up to the task in their 2 wins, but their defense and special teams have made big plays late in games when it matters most. Penn State game in overtime, they get a stop on defense, and they're able to score the game-winning goal in that one. So, and then in this one, same thing. You win a couple of faceoffs late, you score the game-winning goal off a feed from your faceoff guy. So they're getting it done when it matters. It's just they're not performing quite what I thought that in a manner consistent with what I thought they were going to yet. But they're sitting at what, 2-1 now, or is it 3-1? And Inside Lacrosse hasn't. Yeah, sitting at 2-1 with wins over Penn State and Duke and a loss to Maryland. They got North Carolina today, as both Penn and Princeton are turning around and playing North Carolina and Duke. So. Great game, though, and I'm going to shut the hell up. We're going to move on to North Carolina and Penn, which was another very good game from Friday night here. Penn, the best clearing team in the country, failed on 3 of their first 5 clears because of how hard UNC rides, one of the best rides in the country, going up against one of the best clearing teams in the country, and I think Penn was 97.8% or something crazy like that going into this one. But a ton of pressure was put on their defense early because of the riding of just the effort on the ride that North Carolina put out. Proved too much for them to overcome here as Carolina wins 16-8. In the end, Carolina turned the ball over a shit ton, 21 turnovers over the course of the game. That would normally spell doom when you have Emmett, Carroll, and Cage, but Carroll struggled in net as his defense gave way too many, quality shots up to this UNC team that has shooters all over the place. His counterpart, former Ivy League keeper Michael Gianfrancaro, was an even 50% on the day, 8 saves, 8 goals against. He's more than happy in the end to come away with the win. But yeah, Emmett Carroll, you're not going to see him put up too many stinkers like this, but watching this game and paying attention to it, I'd say that the Penn defense kind of left him hanging a little bit too often, especially in transition. And once that happens and you set the tone like that early, it's hard to recover from. So that's not too bad. Face-offs were heavily slanted to North Carolina. Brady Wambach just murked people at the dot here. I keep calling it the dot. I've been chirped by a couple of people in texts where it's like, why are you calling it the dot, you queer? And in the end, I call it the dot because when I was reffing, they had actually moved it to the dot. So it was literally like that weird little thing on the field. Am I doing it right? Like that little dot on the field. And maybe it's back to an X or whatever, because I feel like I'm the only guy calling it the face-off dot, and everyone else is back to calling it the face-off X. So I don't know. Screw me. I might be a weirdo, but yeah, Wambach absolutely smoked people there. In terms of scoring, Tar Heels, Matan 1-3, Priest 1-2. Just a weird hodgepodge of points here. Petramala 3 goals, Duffy 1-1. Like I said, quiet in the first half, kind of showed up. Ty English had 2 really nice goals early on. So Carolina getting it done throughout their roster. You got to love that. And they have to play Princeton today and do it all over again. We get now into number 5 Army against Lafayette. Not a whole lot to talk about in this one because they beat Lafayette up. They're the picture of consistency so far, Army's been. They're not hammering anyone by 20 goals, but they're winning by a margin consistently every time out, and Saturday was no different. One thing that's developed that makes me more of a believer in this Army team here now as they're starting to creep up those rankings into number 5 is they've developed a big 4 offensively. We already knew that Jackson Eicher was going to come up and put out a bunch of points. He's 2-5 yesterday. Gunnar Fellows 4-1. Evan Plunkett 3-1. We knew these guys were going to be big. It's Braden Fountain, the freshman here, 4 goals, 3 helpers. He's been a really nice surprise so far for Army. What was he? 4-1 against UMass, 4-2 against Rutgers, 3-1 against Yale, 5 goals against Mercer, 4-3 now against Lafayette. So this kid's the real deal. And I think that now we already know Army has one of the best defensive teams in the country. Their goalie Sean Byrne is bonkers. He was 64% yesterday, but he's sitting at 74% on the season right now, which won't last. He's going to get into the Patriot League schedule, and they have some other non-conference games that are going to bring that down eventually. But if you look at his stats right now, pretty crazy here. kid's 67%, 77, 84, 75, and 64 so far in each of his first 5 games. So like I said, that won't last. He is bound to get humbled here and there. But, man, I'm rooting for the kid to stay above 50% every game this season. Hell, above 55%. That is a very tall task. But right now, he is an absolute wall in cage. And yesterday, at 64%, was his worst outing so far this season. So that is bonkers. Let's see here. LSM Christian Fournier, he had 3 caused turnovers, 7 GBs, and a helper, as we see here. And all in all, this Army team right now is as complete as any team in the country. They haven't been tested yet because they haven't really played anyone. They got wins over UMass, Rutgers, Yale, Mercer, and Lafayette. At first, everyone was like, holy shit, that Yale win. Look how big that is. But Yale now stinks, apparently, as well. So they haven't been tested, but they're about to be. Because once they get past Holy Cross, they have Lehigh, Boston U, Carolina, Colgate, and Navy just back to back to back to back to back. So they'll get tested, but right now, schedule's not the toughest. Schedule won't be the toughest even by the end, but trust me, this is a very tough Army team. And I will admit, I was sleeping on them. I had them ranked outside the top 10 for probably the first 2 polls before I put them into the top 10, and I've now been creeping them up my poll as well, but I believe now they legit deserve that 5th ranking, and we'll see how that pans out after today's games. Next one, Penn State, Yale. Like I said, Yale, apparently they stink. Matt Traynor was an absolute pedestrian in this game. He puts up, what was it? Just an assist on the day, just 2 shots. Maybe he got injured. Let's hope that isn't the case. But doesn't matter because Penn State rolls. They win 15-9 overall here. Yale now drops to 0-3. So let me say this. I'm going to go off on a tangent here. You know what? Let me say Hunter Aquino. He paced everyone for Penn State. Let's give him props. 2-5. Kyle Lehman took over the goal scoring duties for Traynor. He goes for 5 goals. Let's give the winners their props. And now I'm going to go on my rant here. Yale drops to 0-3. I hyped up Matt Brandow last season and the season before that as being the best player in the country. 2023, I was all Matt Brandow. It's going to be Matt Brandow's year. He was my top pick to win the Tewaaraton. That season, he only put up 70 points, his lowest output up to that point, while Chris Lyons led Yale in scoring with 74. Leo Johnson with 62 points. So the guy that I picked to be a Tewaaraton finalist and maybe win the Tewaaraton because he had put up 90 spots in each of the 2 seasons before that, he ends up not even being their leading scorer. And everybody just wants to talk about Lyons and Johnson, the freshman phenoms and everything like that. Then last year comes. They should be absolutely filthy. You've got Lyons and Johnson returning with Brandow. And the problem being Lyons and Johnson never play that season. They both get injured. Brandow ends up having to play with a hodgepodge attack group. He puts up 99 points on the year. Yale ends up finishing, I think, like 11-4 or something like that without their full complement of attackmen. So the duo of Johnson and Lyons is missing. Brandow goes back, and I think Brandow actually put up 101 points that season. They go 11-4. They don't even have the full complement of attackmen. So I fully expect this season, Brandow's gone. Lyons and Johnson are back, though. Yale has one of the best 1-2 punches on attack out of anyone in the country, except that is not at all how it has been it's played out. Like I thought they were going to fuck shit up, so to speak. So far, after 3 games, the 2 of them have combined for 13 points. That is not going to be good enough for Yale. It's one of Yale's biggest problems because Yale is allergic to playing defense, and everybody kind of expected, okay, they're going to be allergic to playing defense as they have been in prior years, but offensively, they've got to be able to keep pace with some teams, and Lyons and Johnson are obviously going to score a buttload of goals. Carson Kuhl looked very good last year and has been good so far this year. Just hasn't panned out, guys. They've looked like shit, and they keep getting waxed by people. It is not just a problem with the defense, with possessions. They're just getting beat all over the field, left and right. This is not the Yale team that we've seen in the past here, and things aren't going to get any easier for them. Up next, they have Denver, Harvard, and Cornell. I like their chances against Denver, but Harvard and Cornell are on right now both look a lot better than Yale does, and there's a good chance that the Bulldogs are looking at 1-5 after their first 6 games. That's territory this team hasn't seen in a decade. I couldn't go back far enough to find a scenario where Yale has been in this bad of a position. They were 1-3 in 2017, but finished that year 10-6. So I don't see that type of turnaround happening this year, but the sun shines on a dog's ass, or whatever it is, as they say, at least once every day. We'll see how it goes. Brown, Georgetown, did not watch this one at all. Hoyas have faced a pretty tough schedule thus far in terms of ranked opponents. Hopkins, Penn, and Notre Dame. Brown, unranked. Wasn't too much of a problem as Georgetown went up 8-1 at one point before allowing Brown enough room to flex a bit and put up some goals. You'd initially want to credit the Hoyas defense with not allowing Brown to score their second goal of the game until well into the third quarter. The issue, Brown outshot the Hoyas 44-36, even though Georgetown did have the edge in terms of shots on goal, 27-25. So we pop into here giving Anderson Moore credit. Anderson Moore, the Georgetown goalie, 17 saves against 8 goals against. And he was a big-time a-hole over the third quarter. He made 6 stops over the course of the – what quarter was it? Second quarter, over the course of the second quarter, as Brown tried to keep pace as the Hoyas had a 3-1 lead and they were extending that lead a little bit. He comes up huge, has 6 saves in that second quarter, and, en route to the 17 saves and a big win here. A big surprise to me in this one, Ross Prince, my guy here who I've been hyping up, 7 of 15, not a bad day, but Wilson Van Buren then comes in, spells him, goes 3 of 8, whereas this Dash Sacks of Brown wins 13 of 22, 59%. So, this game would have been even more out of control had the Brown faceoff unit not played well. So, credit to them. They did a good job. But that's about it in the end here. And Georgetown wins that one. Syracuse. Can you believe I did not roll Syracuse highlights over here? Just not a whole lot. I'm going to be what would you call it? A Debbie Downer here for a little bit. Just this game in itself, it wasn't a whole lot to write home about. A nice bounce back win for the Orange. However, once again, we're faced with the tale of two teams. You see Syracuse comes out, has an 11-1 lead at the half, and then they come out in the second half and they give up 3 goals unanswered to Utah over the course of the third. They don't even score. Now, in this one, the difference is they did score 4 in the fourth, but this wasn't planned. It wasn't planned to come out in the third quarter and not score a goal, and that's a problem. What we've seen thus far, and this is the trend that I don't like, is in the 2 losses that Syracuse has thus far, they've been outscored 8-3 in the third quarter, 6-3 in the fourth quarter. But that's not the only problem here, is because even that trend's continued even against the mediocre teams they played. Against Vermont, they were up 10-1 against Vermont at half. They got outscored 4-3 over the second half to Vermont. Once again, that's not a case of, hey, we're up, let's let the other team play. It was a case of the other team made adjustments at halftime, and Syracuse came out and was semi-stifled by them, even though they had a huge lead early in the game. They have an 11-1 lead in this game. They come out and get outscored 3-0, as I said here. Once again, not planned. You didn't come out with an 11-1 lead and say, hey, let's take it easy here in the second half and maybe not score a goal in the third quarter. This team and the coaches need to figure out how to put 4 quarters of lacrosse together against mediocre to good teams, and they need to figure it out this week because they got Hopkins coming to the Dome next weekend. If they play this way against Hopkins, they could go into it at halftime up by a goal or 2, but Hopkins is going to come back in the second half and beat them because they are going to make adjustments at halftime based on the flow of the game and the feel of the game. If Syracuse can't do the same, this you're going to see this 4-2 record turn to 4-3. The schedule for Syracuse down the stretch is absolutely brutal. Hopkins, okay, great. We get Manhattan in the mix. They're going to kick the shit out of them at the Dome. But then Colgate, very good lacrosse team. Virginia, scary against Syracuse all the time. Notre Dame, Cornell, Duke, and Carolina. If they don't start playing good lacrosse, it is not completely outside the realm of possibility that they only win 2 more games the rest of the year. I do not think that's going to happen. I'm thinking they're going to turn it around, and I'm just assuming offensively they have so much talent. How can they not figure it out with all the game tape that they now have and with the lessons they've learned? So as I'm chirping them, I'm being critical. I'm also at the same time hopeful they turn it around, and I know they have the talent on the roster to do so. But at some point, you got to piss or get off the pot. I was one of the people chirping from the mountaintops Cuse is back at the beginning of this year, and I legitimately believed that, and now I'm just kind of sitting here thinking, okay, I have to eat shit at this point and now be more measured in my approach to this lacrosse team, which is what I'm trying to do. But I'm still very hopeful that this team makes the Final Four. I think it was Adam Levi on Twitter had said, my favorite take of the week is I bet the Syracuse team still makes it to a Final Four despite the 2 losses. So I hope he's right and I'm wrong and I can eat shit in the end. Now let's get to some positives here overall. I did like that the scoring was spread out. So if we dive back into the box score for this one, Finn Thompson 1-2, Spallina 0-3, Owen Hiltz 2-1, Leo 2-0, Wyatt Hoddle, who's now on the first line, 2-0, Luke Roa back 2-0, Carter Rice, short stick D mid, gets a helper, Peyton Anderson, the big boy freshman, 1-0, Trey Deer 1-0. We got defenders, Michael Gray scoring goals. McCool had an assist. Billy Dwan had a goal. John Mullen had a goal. So it's like I liked the depth in the scoring against a definitely outmatched Utah team. I just don't like that second half overall. Jimmy McCool looked very good in cage. 11 saves, 5 goals against after being benched in the Harvard game. So that's good for him to bounce back. John Mullen, 13-22 on the day, 8 GBs with a helper. So that's a good day for him at the dot. So all good things in that way. It's just like I said, my trepidation here. I had very high expectations for this team. Losing to Maryland was okay, especially now that we see Maryland is legitimately the best team in the country. It's just that loss to Harvard at the Dome after dominating faceoff so badly. It just has me worried. Hopkins is going to be the real test. If they can pull off the win against Hopkins in the Dome, even if they don't make it to a Final Four, you could still feel good saying Cuse is back and they're back to being one of the better teams in the country. If they can't beat Hopkins at the Dome, I'm going to start to worry a little bit more. And then I think that, they still might be able to make the tournament and turn things around, but it's going to be rough. You lose to Hopkins, you go 4-3 with the schedule you have left. It's going to be ugly. They really need this win against Hopkins. I don't want to say it's like a season maker or breaker, but it feels a hell of a lot like a season maker or breaker, only because a win in that game makes everybody feel a little bit better about where they stand against the rest of their schedule. A loss in that game is going to do the opposite, I think, overall. Even with a down ACC, I think that'll be the case. All right, shutting up here. Now we got to talk about Harvard Marquette. Not a whole lot here. Harvard jumps out to a 5-1 lead. They're up 11-6 at half. Marquette does kind of make this a little closer than I thought. Once again, that's just Harvard's defense isn't anything to write home about. Overall, they're going to require pretty much the ability to outscore teams, and that's what they did. Sam King, 7-2. He's a dog. Teddy Malone, 3-3. Logan Ip, 4-1. So they got some good scoring out of here. Goalkeeping, not good on the day, but look at poor Lucas Lawes over here, 26%. And then at the faceoff dot, Adam Slager, if they didn't just wreck the faceoff dot here in this one. So once again, Harvard is forced to win a game because they got demolished at the faceoff dot overall with 2 guys here for Marquette above 65%. Ty Ambush, 10-14, 71%. So man, Harvard has the true face-off problems in the Ivy League, it looks like. But hey, they win. Number 12 Harvard beats Marquette. They'll probably keep pace right where they're ranked. I don't see them bumping up or down the polls too much. Denver beat up on Marist. That was going to happen. We knew that here. What I'm worried about for Denver is, where's my guy? He must be hurt. What's his nuts? Doesn't look like he played. Milosky. Yeah, I don't see Milosky on this box score at all. I presume Marist didn't keep him off the board completely. But the tail of this one here, tight game. 6-5 at the half. Denver comes out, beats them 12-0 over the course of the second half. So that's a hell of a job. Manning, once again, looks good in cage here. So I think Manning's going to be the answer in cage for Denver long-term. 12 saves, 5 goals against. And like I said, Denver needs to find consistency there to be good, but they found consistency there overall. And then Krause, maybe he isn't the answer at the dot, but he's played tougher the last couple of weeks as well. He goes 11-20. Not too bad. Loyola Colgate. I just want to talk about Colgate because, once again, one of my sleeper teams. Now they've eked into the top 20. Number 16, they're sitting at 4-2. Their only losses are to Penn State and Virginia. They started 0-2, but they've rattled off 4 straight wins against Albany, Harvard. So that win against Harvard looks great for them now. Villanova, and they just beat Loyola up pretty badly. So once again, yeah, Loyola stinks. They stink. When I say that, I hear Dave Chappelle saying it in my head. More like it. They stink. Liam Connor, 2-5. Jack Turner, 3-2. So they're getting the job done. Lacombe in cage, 16 saves, 5 goals against. That's always going to help you win games. Decent at the faceoff dot. Not great, but yeah, Colgate, a very good lacrosse team. Ohio State beats up on Bryant by a whopping score of 7-5. I mean, if you had to take the under in that one, not the outcome that I expected after Ohio State beat up on Virginia last weekend. But hey, man, number 17 in the country, but they are 6-1. So other than that loss to Utah, Ohio State's handling their business. They're getting some scoring, just enough scoring to beat teams here. Garrett Haas, 4 assists. Alex Mariner, 2 goals. Ryan Donnery, 2 goals. In cage, Caleb Fyock has actually been pretty good here. 58% against Bryant on the day. But if we go back so far this season, above 50% in every game with a very good save percentage at this point, 65%. They have not played teams that are lighting the world on fire by any means as we look at this, but they did take it to UVA, and in that game, Fyock made 12 saves against 5 goals against. He was 71%. So lots of things at this point to be excited about if you're an Ohio State fan after losing that Utah game. It kind of felt like, oh, shit, man. Ohio State's going to have a rough one maybe, but not the case. They turned it around by beating up on some shitty teams, and then they beat up on Virginia, who's a good team. Bryant, not a terrible team, 2-2 here now, but they're not great. Notre Dame, the true test. Next weekend, Ohio State's going to have to take on Notre Dame at Notre Dame. Hopefully, Garrett Haas and Mariner here can keep pace. They've been playing well so far. Fairfield beat Providence. I'm surprised here. I actually thought Ryan Bell was going to help Providence be a better team. I mean, they're 3-3, not bad, but I thought it would be Providence that would be winning these games against the teams that are on the fringe of the top 20. And that hasn't been the case thus far. Fairfield, though, has looked very good. Jake Gilbert, 4-1. Devin Lamprin, 4-0. Fairfield defensively has been an excellent team here. Owen Hirsch and Cage, 74%. You're going to love that. Face-off dot, Daniel Davis wins 12-19, 63%. And then I got to check the caused turnover totals to see here. Radosic, man. This Julian Radosic, I'm going to have to do a short here showing these 4 turnovers, but this kid has been the real deal. I forget what's his nuts from Albany. Popped off 2 seasons ago, and then over 2 seasons, that's all anyone could talk about. Now he's a PLL pro. Radosic is that next guy. The dude has been playing lacrosse, getting up and down the field, mixing it up with everybody. So credit to him as being one of the reasons this Fairfield team is so good, as he's just been an animal with the long pole. Boston U and Navy. Boston U ekes into the rankings, and now they're going to get bumped, and I think Navy's going to take over that 20 spot. So Navy handled their business, though, man. 7-1 at halftime. Boston, you got their shit together and outscored them 8-6 over the course of the second half, but the damage was already done. And face-off depth is what Inside Lacrosse is telling us should be credited for this victory here, which I don't see that. I see Boston U waxing Navy at the face-off dot, and Navy just managed to win the game anyway. So I don't know what that headline's all about. Maybe I'm misreading it here. Daly, I keep it. Dan Daly's been playing very good in cage for Navy. He's been up and down a little bit, though. Not his best day, but he still gets the win in cage. And Jack Flaherty, 3 goals, 3 helpers. Where is the freshman here? I keep forgetting who the freshman is for Navy that's been tearing it up. Will Goers. Here he goes. Yeah, Will Goers, 14 points so far in 5 games, so he's another bright spot for Navy here. I like seeing the freshmen rock shit for the service academies, because that's not normal that you end up getting young guys getting burned like this and then playing at such a high level for the service academies. So that's it. The games today here. It did seem like kind of a weak slate, other than the top 4 games were all very good, very interesting. But yeah, right now, as you're probably getting ready to watch this, Carolina is going to take on Princeton, and we're going to have Duke take on Penn. Richmond, Cornell are going to do battle here. Number 3 Cornell against number 14 Richmond, so that's going to also be a great game. And it's like, damn, now I'm going to have to sip on beers again for a 2nd day in a row, 3rd day in a row technically, and watch all these lacrosse games, because we got a good slate today. And like I said, big shit, people. D3. I'm doing a D3 recap show. We're going to rip through the top 10 for D3 each week and cut highlights up of all the best games that are being played amongst the top teams. But I'm going to try to get in and talk a little bit deeper about some D3 lacrosse here overall, even if it's more of like a news kind of reel where I'm just dropping, giving some guys some shine, ripping through some box scores and things like that. I think that the D3 needs to be covered more. It'll help me a little bit more too in terms of views, because it's just a metric shit ton of D3 teams. So Tuesday, comeback Tuesday, D3 recap show from this weekend and a big podcast. And then Thursday we'll do the previews, and then every Sunday I've been here. Make sure to go to TikTok, Instagram, putting up shorts all willy-nilly on those. I'm going to get back into putting film reviews up on this channel. Just randomly, I'm going to throw out some film review videos here and there. So that's that. Thank you for watching. Go to LaxFactor.com. Get yourself a t-shirt. Support us that way. But I'm going to get the hell out of here and come back Tuesday. Watch the D3 show. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And Hoost is out. And I really did butcher that ending. Normally, I'm pretty good at kind of bringing the ending all together, and I just absolutely flubbed it like a complete moron. So I apologize for that if you're still listening. The LaxFactor Podcast.